You're listening to the Patriot Nation podcast.
All right, welcome into another edition of the Patriot Nation podcast, of course, brought to you by Prize Picks, which is the official daily fantasy app of CLNS Media. Download the app and put in code CLNS, and they will match your first deposit 100% up to $100. So go do that today. Today, it's just a guy, Pat Lane, here, and I'm joined by a very special guest. He is a writer and on-air host. You know him. You love him. At 98.5 The Sports Hub, I should say. I'm sorry. You know him, you love him. It's Alex Barth. Barth, thanks for coming through, man. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, no problem. Sometimes you got to leave out that Sports Hub for you love them. But people have been great tuning in with the draft stuff. So appreciate all of them. Appreciate you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. And you know, it's funny because it's one of those things. I mean, I remember, back when I was hosting shows with Spags, we had you on back in, way back in the day. And so it's good to see guys like you and Lazar and guys like that have been in here for a long time grinding, getting that name recognition now. And it's great to see. And so, and you deserve it. You've worked your ass off and you're a great guy. And so we're happy for you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's weird. I'm not, one of the youngest anymore. We got, Mike and Taylor and Brian and Sophie. And there's like a whole other group of writers now that are like after me and Evan, which feels very weird.
Yeah. Yep, that's for sure. So that's the other. We forgot to mention the Catch 22 podcast, which you host with Evan Lazar. But nevertheless, so all right, let's get into the draft. People have heard you, obviously, but let's get in there, right? Okay. Patriots are sitting number 3. What is your ideal situation? I mean, obviously, the ideal situation would be the Bears take Jaden Daniels and the Commanders take Drake May and we take Caleb Williams, right? But that's not going to happen. So what is your realistic? Caleb Williams goes number 1. What is your dream scenario for number 3?
My dream scenario for number 3 is Washington takes JJ McCarthy second, so the Patriots can't do anything stupid. I'd be happy with Jaden Daniels or Drake May. Honestly, I've explained it this way: if I'm starting a team from scratch, I have nobody. This is the first person in the organization, and I'm picking one of these 2 quarterbacks. I would go with Jaden Daniels, but I think if I were to just rate them blindly out of 100. I would have Jaden Daniels as like an 86 and Drake May is like an 85. It's that close. And when I factor in I know people saying, well, what do the Patriots have in place? Their offense, they're rebuilding. No, but there's a structure in place in terms of the coaching staff and things like that. I think Drake May is a better fit for what Alex Van Pelt wants to do. It's going to be a little bit less of an adjustment, things like that. So I would take Drake May. Drake May is my ideal, but if they end up with Jaden Daniels or they somehow trade back and take Michael Penix, either way, I'd say, they walked out of the first round doing what they needed to do. Trading, I will amend that to say trading back for a quarterback scares the crap out of me because you think you're trading back for him and then somebody jumps you. Or if nobody jumps you, what did you see that nobody else did? But I mean, if they I don't think they would. I don't think they're going to take Michael Penix at all. They're showing no interest in him. But yeah, if they walk out of the draft, one of those 3 guys, hey, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, they have their franchise quarterback. Let's go, 10-year run Super Bowl. But I think they got as close as they're going to get. They added the kind of prospect they need to add, and now you're on to the development phase of it.
Right. No, 100%. I love that idea. Right. And it's, look, I mean, I personally am a Drake May guy. I don't know if I believe in Jaden Daniels. I'm not sure. But here's the thing. And ultimately what it comes down to is that's me. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Right. And so there's a whole lot of people that I trust and respect that believe Jaden Daniels can do it. And if the Patriots believe that as well, then I'm going to sit there and say, okay, well, here we go. This is who they wanted and this is who they drafted and we're good to go. What I don't want to have happen is for the football guys to not trust Jaden Daniels. And for, Robert or Jonathan, most likely Jonathan Kraft, sit there and say, we need a quarterback, so we're drafting one. And so, okay, it's going to be Jaden Daniels, it's going to be JJ McCarthy. You choose. Drake May went number 2. I don't care who you take number 3, but you're taking someone, right? And now they have to choose between a guy they don't love, right? And so all I want is for them to love the guy. I don't care if I love him or not. That doesn't make a difference.
Right.
What the hell do I know? Right. So so that's the part of it for me that, that I want to make sure happens. I feel like we're going to be okay in that scenario. I feel like they're going to stay out of it because they have for the most part. But it's just some of the comments that have come out lately from Robert Kraft, some of the things that have been done lately, some of the articles that have been written about Jonathan Kraft. That worries me. It just worries me. And that's something that we have no control over. We won't ever even know if that's the case, right? I mean, there's no way to know if that's the case or not outside of things getting leaked out of the, out of the building or whatever. But that's my biggest concern right now is like, okay, maybe I don't believe in Jane Daniels, but as long as Gerard Mayo and Elliot Wolf and Alex Van Pelt do, then I'm okay with that if that's where they want to go.
What if one or two of them do and the others don't? Because I think that as much as they want to talk about consensus and collaboration,
Right.
like you're just not all going to see it the exact same
100%.
way. What I would say is the scenario you laid out where they're forced into taking a quarterback they don't like, I'm not worried about that happening just because we've heard that they're interested in Daniels and May, and they're going to have a shot at one of those guys, right?
Yep.
Or Caleb Williams, but
right.
They're going to have a shot at one of Daniels or May. We've heard they like both those guys. Gerard Mayo said that thing at the owners' meetings last week about, the 5 guy. It's a 5 quarterback draft. And I don't know who he left off. I think it's Penix. It should be Nix in that conversation. But
yeah,
somebody, I think all of the quarterbacks, except for, again, maybe Penix just because or it's the ultimate smokescreen, which would be great as a Penix fan. But there's somebody in the building that believes in all the quarterbacks, and that not one person that believes in all 5 or all 6, but like all 5 have some believers somewhere in the building. And how that lines up, is the question, and how much are they really going to be collaborative? There's that report last week that Elliot Wolf is pushing for JJ McCarthy. Well, if it's supposed to be collaborative, pushing for one guy against the rest of the building doesn't sound very collaborative, right? So how much is that actually going to play out, that kind of thing? But it does. I don't think you're going to see a situation. Ownership may come down and say, we want you to take a quarterback. Like, I'm not ruling that out, but I don't think you're going to see a situation where they look around the room and everybody's upset with the quarterback they take. Some people might, and honestly, I no matter who they take, there's probably going to be some people that aren't super pumped about it. Again, It's just with something as finicky as projecting quarterbacks and evaluating quarterbacks and how many people they have in the room. I find it hard to believe they're going to be able to get everybody exactly on the same page. But everything that's been put out there so far, again, outside of Michael Penix, it doesn't seem like they're entirely out on any of these guys.
It's a great point. That is a great point. And that's one of the things that I think can't be understated is that they are trying to build a collaborative effort. And part of building a collaborative effort is understanding that we're not going to always agree, right? That there are going to be times when we want to do one thing, when some guy, 2 guys want this and 3 guys want that and 2 other guys want this. And, hey, we have to come to a decision here because I feel strongly that Jaden Daniels is the guy and can do it. And he feels strongly that Drake May is the guy and can do it. And he feels strongly that JJ McCarthy is the guy and can do it. And so now it's, who makes that final decision? And of course, these are conversations that they're having now, right? They're not having them the night of the draft. They're having them now. If we're there, who are we taking first, right? Who's the guy that we're taking, right? And then you kind of go from there. And so what is ironic to me is that 2 games are why we're in the position that we're in, right? The Buffalo Bills lost to the Patriots in Gillette with a fourth quarter the only fourth quarter comeback of Mac Jones's career was against the Buffalo Bills. And if the Patriots lose that game instead of winning that game, they have the number 2 pick. They went into Pittsburgh on a Thursday night. When all Pittsburgh had to do, Pittsburgh played like 3 straight terrible teams and lost to all 3 of them. The Cardinals the week before the Patriots, and then they lost to someone else the next week, and I forget who it was. But they were in position to win to make the playoffs easily and even compete for the AFC North. Maybe not realistically compete for the AFC North, but potentially compete for the AFC North. And they choked down the stretch. And I was at that Patriots game, and it was wild. Where I was sitting there like, what the hell is going on? Like, the first half was unbelievable, and they just held on in the second half. If they lose either of those games, they're drafting number 2 instead of number 3. And now we're sitting there saying, hey, Patriots can take whoever they want. You like Drake May, you like Jaden Daniels, like whoever it is, just take that guy at 2, right? And so it is kind of ironic that, especially with the Bills, it's like, man, we hate the Bills so much. And it's like that, if the Patriots love whether it's whether it's Daniels or May, and that guy goes 2, they're at 3 because they beat the Bills at home, right? It's just kind of fitting if the Bills were to screw the Patriots over in that situation would suck. But
yeah, I mean, go figure. You throw a Denver game in there too, right? Chad Riley hits that kick after spraying the ball the previous few weeks. But that's what it is, and that's kind of why I was warning people when they're like tank. I'm like, you don't know what you're getting into with this. I'm sorry, Patriots fans, you're not used, and it's a good thing you're not used to it. But like, and this is part of the reason why I was so late to get off Mac Jones compared to everybody else. It wasn't that I thought Mac Jones was going to flip the switch and become the superstar quarterback if they just gave him time. But if he could have even got back to being serviceable, and I said this at the time, the worst place you can be is the quarterback carousel. Because once you're in there, and you might not come out for 20, 30 years. You don't know. It might take a year, it might take 30 years. And so it was, let's make sure we know for sure. And we ultimately found out that Mac Jones was not the guy. Yep. And so you go back in the carousel. But I would stress this. I'm glad Patriots fans, not glad because I wish the team didn't have that season, but hopefully we don't have to go through this again soon. But let's say they draft the wrong guy. Right. Now Patriots fans have this frame of reference that the last place you want to be is in the quarterback carousel because you're relying on, among other things, a bunch of nonsense that's entirely outside of your control. And that's just not where I want to be. That's not where anybody should want to be.
100%, right? And you get into a situation where, okay, Dak Prescott might be a free agent next year. Well, if you draft a guy at number 3, you're not signing Dak Prescott next year. I don't care how much.
But Dak might not become a free agent. I hate that whole way. You say the same about Trevor Lawrence. Right.
And I agree with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate here. If you draft a guy at number 3 and he sucks, you're not signing Dak Prescott next year. You're not drafting a quarterback at the top of the first round next year because you just drafted a guy at number 3 overall. There's no way you're going to do that, right? And so that becomes a situation, right? Obviously, you have the situation in Arizona where they drafted Kyler Murray and traded away Jiminy Christmas. The UCLA kid. What the hell is his name? Right? UCLA. Wasn't he UCLA? The one
Josh Rosen.
Thank you, Josh Rosen.
Yeah.
So, but that's a completely different situation because that was a different regime, right? They're not changing regimes here. So, anyways, it's a tough spot to be in, right? As you said, we're on the carousel. You got to find the guy. You have to draft the guy, and that's why I've said all along, if they don't believe that guy is available at 3, they have to trade back, in my opinion. Because and we get the reports that they're in on these guys and they're in on McCarthy and they're in on May and they're in on Daniels and they're in on all these guys. But if they don't believe that guy is the guy, then they can't sit there at 3 and take him. They can't, right? Because now you're staying on the carousel again, right? And in 2 or 3 years you're back where you started, and instead of, especially with this team with the just completely devoid of offensive talent for the most part. And with so much offensive talent on there, if you can move back with someone and everyone gives the example of Minnesota because they have the 2 first-round picks, but even if it's someone like Denver or someone else where you're getting a first-round pick this year and a second-round pick this year and a first-round pick next year and whatever, right? And so that to me is, is the situation where I look at it and say, hey, if that's how they feel, then move back and retool the rest of the offense and figure out the quarterback position later.
Yeah, I don't want them to draft a quarterback just to draft a quarterback. That's how you end up with EJ Manuel. I certainly wouldn't want that. And at that point, I don't think it makes sense to stick and pick at 3 with Marvin Harrison or even Joe Alt. You can maybe get Joe Alt. I wouldn't move back. Even if I'm moving back, I wouldn't move back past 6 because I still think they should be trying to add a blue chip player. Yeah. And you're going to get a haul from the Giants. I mean, you should still get this year's first, and that Giants next year first. Even if they kind of hit on the quarterback, that roster's terrible. So you could be in the position, a year from now, you could be in the position the Bears are in, which obviously is not a bad spot to be. So I'm with you on that. Just go, if you feel like you need to come out of the draft with a quarterback, you don't like any of the guys, just, trade back and take Spencer Rattler later on. But again, I don't think they're in the spot where they're taking a quarterback just to take quarterback. Like I said, I think there's belief within the build. And the worst thing they could do is half the building believes in May, half the building believes in Daniels. Nobody believes in both. So they don't give either side a shot and they call it a draw and they trade out. Like, no, somebody thought they saw something in one of these guys. Like, that would kill me. If everybody in the building is like, well, this sucks, we're on to next year. Now, that's always a risk because, we talk about how scary it is to be in the quarterback carousel. This is a good year to be. There's never a good time to be in it. But imagine if we were doing this with Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis instead of Drake May and Jaden Daniels, right? So
Jiminy Christmas.
And I know next year, Shedeur Sanders and Quinn Ewers, but like you never know, especially in the era of NIL, you never know what's going to happen. So if they're moving on because they don't believe in the quarterbacks, fine. If they're moving on because they have some down the road plan for a future quarterback, I hate that because
I agree.
You don't know what's going to happen down the road. I wanted at one point, I liked Phil Dracovic, and then I saw what he looked like when he didn't have star players around him. And I was out on that. So I'd be very careful about that.
Well, that's the biggest thing, right? And you see these things that people come out, the Patriots aren't good enough to draft a quarterback. No, that's stupid. That's just a stupid take. You need the guy. You draft him whenever he's available. He's available now. Your offense sucks. Who cares? And that's the biggest, right. And so that's where some of the guys on the Sports Hub, Zoe in particular, has been very loud about if you draft a guy at 3, he has to play. And I completely disagree with that. I think that, if he's not ready to play and you don't feel like you have the weapons around him receiving the ball and also the people in front of him that can block for him well, don't put him out there. Let him sit. Who cares? Like, what difference does it make? And that's where I'm at is if you have to sit him, then you sit him. But if you feel like that guy is a franchise altering player, you have to take him no matter what your roster looks like. It doesn't make a difference.
Well, the reality is there's a bit of a fine line here. If you believe he's a franchise altering player, he should be able to make plays with nobody around him. I'm with you on the line. If you can't protect him, you risk him getting sped up. If he's just thrown into tight windows, let him throw in a tight window. He's seeing the defense. Like, that's important. I just want to make sure he's protected, which is why I'd go tackle at 34. But if the plan is to sit him, and I've been very strong on this, because I think you take a guy 3. If you're taking him that high, you should have some sort of conviction that he will be ready year 1. Maybe not week 1,
right?
But year 1, right? I use Halloween as like an objective, can we get him in there? But if the plan is the roster's not going to be ready, we're going to draft him, sit him, we're going to pick elsewhere, and just like this offense is not going to be suitable to a rookie quarterback, but that's fine because he's not going to play.
Right.
If that's the plan, I don't necessarily agree with that plan, but it's like I understand it. If that's the plan, that is the plan. When you're 2-6 and Jacoby Brissett's hurt and Bailey Zappi's throwing picks left and right, and the stands are half full and they're booing, you don't get said, oh shoot, we got to put him in. We got to the people saying, oh, draft Drake May and sit him, draft Drake May and sit him. When the team's 2-6, you don't get to come back and say you got to play Drake May. Right. Whatever the plan is,
you got to stick with it. Yeah,
just stick. You got to commit to it.
I will say the only caveat I will say to that is that the plan might be, and it's not exactly Justin Herbert because you don't want to puncture his lung with a needle, but the plan might be somewhere around that area where you say, hey, look. We're going to sit him at the beginning of the year. We want him to learn the offense a little bit more. We want him to go. And then we play him midway through the season, right? And maybe that's the plan, right? And maybe
that's a different plan. That's a fine plan, but that's a different plan.
Yes. Yep. And so, we'll see, right? And I think but you're 100% right. Like, they have to have conviction with that plan. Now, again, that plan might be today. Well, maybe they show up to training camp and they're like, this dude is too good. We can't sit him, right? And so if that's the situation and you feel like the offensive line and the weapons are good enough that he can make it, then you do it. I think, you can change that plan if you want. But
but that's where I get nervous. That's where I get nervous because all right, he looks really good in camp. That's not live reps.
Right.
And the problem is whenever you put him in, you have to be sure because the last thing you can do, especially after all the nonsense we went through the last 2 years, right? The last thing you can do is draft a guy third overall. And I don't care what the reasoning behind it is. Even if the reasoning makes sense, that's a benching. If you draft a guy third overall, put him in at the start of the season, and then pull him without an injury, like a real injury, he got benched. Even if it's, he had a sore shoulder, so we're going to sit him down. No, we all know what this is. You're benching the third overall pick as a rookie. Like you need to be sure when you put him on the field, not just that he's ready, but that that you're comfortable with the team around him.
Exactly.
Because there's no going back on that one. There shouldn't be. There should not be any going back on that one.
I agree 100% on that. And that's one of the things that I was so pissed about the Mac Jones thing against the Bears, where like he should have never started that game. And once he goes back in, it's his team. Like he's the starting quarterback. Once he goes back in, it's his team. You can't put him back in a terrible situation where he's still hurt and then bench him. And and everyone's booing him. It was an awful situation. 2022 is, in my opinion, 2022 is the reason that Bill Belichick isn't here anymore. Not 2023, 2022, in my opinion. But
I'm with you.
That's a different story for a different day. So quarterback at 3. You think tackle at 34. Now the question is there a left tackle that you think will make it to 34, or are they going to have to take another pick? And because they're close enough to the end of the first round, they're going to have to take another pick and move into those mid to late 20s to take a guy. Because realistically, you're not drafting a right tackle. That doesn't make any sense because you have a right tackle. You just signed one, right? In Mike Onwenu. And so who is that left tackle that you think might be available at 34? Or is the guy you want going to go in the mid-20s and you're going to have to package a pick? Which, by the way, I think I'm 100% fine with that, right? Like I'm totally on board with package on the pick and go get the guy because you need that left tackle.
Yeah, so this has been one of my big takes with the draft. I hate the idea of the Patriots picking at 34. Just the way the board sets up for them there, move up, move down, I don't care. Doesn't make any sense to pick at 34. Who could fall? I do think you'll see one of Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton, like that group could drop. And I love Guyton for them. Maybe it's Kingsley Suamataia. Maybe move back a little bit to get him. I just this wide receiver class is so deep. Tackle isn't. Tackle's a need.
Yep.
Part of me worries that they're just going to do tackle by committee again this year, and they're going to take a wide receiver with that pick. But again, you got to get this thing set up for a quarterback, whoever it is. You need the blind side protected. That comes first. That comes before anything else. So I'd like to see them go tackle with that, whatever their second pick ends up being. Even if they move back, right? Move back to 6, take JJ McCarthy, and then, I guess it'd be move back to 11, take Michael Penix. 23 should be a tackle, right? Whatever permutation you want to do.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like they're going to go more wide receiver. Like if I was guessing what they will do, T. Lee's telling me receiver at 34, but I would go tackle.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the problem is that left tackles don't grow on trees, right? They don't. Right. And neither do wide receiver ones.
Well, they kind of do now. Like if any position does, the way that they're churning these kids out from the 7-on-7 programs and colleges playing more open and all of that, like last year was the anomaly. 4 of the last 5 years, it's been, oh my God, this is the best wide receiver class ever. And they keep getting better.
That's a good point.
That's I bank on that trend continuing.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. My dad has been on me about this. It's an insane idea. I'm going to run it by you. I'm going to see what you think. So the Patriots draft May at 3 or Daniels at 3, whomever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then they take 68 and their first round pick next year and move into those mid-20s or so to take whether it be a left tackle or a wide receiver. And now you have 3, early to mid-20s. By the way, he's just texted me and said it's not insane. I know, Dad, it's not insane. But I'm just, right? They draft a tackle there, theoretically, and then you have 34, or you even trade back from 34 and draft a wide receiver there. What do you think about that?
You'd better have a time machine. You'd better have a time machine to know you're hitting on all those picks because that's your window. That's your development window at that point. And that pick next year, like they're not they're not going to be a playoff team next year. Like, let's be honest. They should be better, but they're not going to be a playoff team.
Yeah.
So,
100%. Yeah.
You're giving up a very valuable asset at that point, and I'm very hesitant to part with future top 100 picks if I'm the Patriots. I'm very, very, very hesitant to do that because even if they have a good draft this year, they need 2 or 3 drafts to really get this thing back. And you start, and I used to fall victim to this a ton when I really started doing this, is you see the draft for what it is for this draft and you get excited and, F the future. I want the guys I want now. And you can get a guy next year who's probably going to give you about what you would get at 20. You got to wait a year to get him. But the one thing the Patriots have right now is time. I would be more surprised than anything if Robert Kraft one and done's Gerard Mayo, right? So they have some time here. I wouldn't be pushing all the chips to the center of the table just yet. I think it's way too early for that. And that's what that move would be. You'd better have a time machine. You'd better know. Somebody better have come back from the future and said, this dude's going to be a Hall of Famer. Like, you're getting the next all-time great at his position to trade that future first.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel too. Like I look at it and just think like, I can't give up. I just can't give up a future first round pick. I can't do it. Right. Because they're not going to be good. Right. And we all kind of expected they're not going to be good. And if that's the case, then you're talking about a top 10 pick. And it's like, you're going to give up a top 10 pick to move into the 20s for something. I guess it could be something good, but it might not be, And so it's one of the funny things actually is the Niners did that with the Patriots a long time ago. And of course the Niners said they were going to be good and they weren't. And the Patriots ended up getting the number 7 pick in the draft, but the Niners drafted Joe Staley, right? And so it ended up actually working out for both teams, whereas the Patriots actually drafted Gerard Mayo. Well, of course, they traded back, but they ended up with Gerard Mayo with that trade.
Yeah. And,
the Niners ended up with basically a Hall of Fame left tackle, right? And so that's one of those ones that paid off for both teams. But it's just it's such a question mark, and especially when you know that you're going to be a top 10 pick. It's awfully difficult to make that move.
Right. It's a tremendous, tremendous risk. And I just, for better or worse, and I'm speaking in generalities about Patriots fans here.
Yeah.
There was a lot of complaint over the last 5 to 10 years about them being too unorthodox in the draft. And we all know why that was.
Right.
And it seems like Bill Belichick's gone, and suddenly that's whether it's trading down for a quarterback, whether it's trading a future first, everybody's pumping these unorthodox ideas. And which did you want? Did you want the unorthodox draft, the swing big massive risk draft, or do you want to draft like people? Why can't they be like every other team, taking a quarterback at 3, and then maybe you trade back into the late end of the first, but not parting with future assets? That's every other team. That's how every other team does it.
Right.
So if you were somebody screaming when Bill was here that he was too weird about it, and it wasn't as much like every other team, you don't get to sit here and say, take Marvin Harrison Jr. and trade down, or let's take JJ McCarthy super early, or no, one or the other. Although if Bill was here, he draft not Will Anderson, he draft Dallas Turner 3rd overall. Or Cooper DeJean, or Cooper trade back.
Oh my Lord. I love Cooper DeJean, but
I do too. No, he's a great player, and he's such a Bill player, but
yeah,
another defensive back.
I'll tell you, it's so funny because people killed my mock draft this week because I did trade back to 6 and drafted Joe Walt and then drafted Cooper DeJean at 34, and people went ballistic. And they were look, this is, but
I traded back to 6, took Neighbors, and then I took Tyler Nubin, 47th, who is a safety, a true safety. And I released the mock draft the day after they extended Duggar. And I still stand by. Like, I would love, now, I don't want them to take a safety with it was their 3rd pick because I traded up for Guyton. I did a bunch of trades, but I still would like to see them use a decent pick on a true free safety. I no more box safeties, no more tweeners, no more hybrids. You got enough of those guys, but you pay Kyle Duggar all this money. Last year showed us he is a different player when he plays near the line of scrimmage versus when they use him as a deep safety. And if you pay that guy that money, you need to maximize what his ability, which is playing him in the box. At the same time, Jabril Peppers, I want to maximize that guy because he freaking rules at what he does. So I don't want to see either of those guys playing deep. I just don't. I think you're wasting talent at that point. I'd like to see them, whether it's getting somebody late in free agency, Justin Simmons is still out there, or it's a Tyler Nubin, or you go a little later in the draft, a guy like Jalen Simpson out of Auburn. I'd like to see them, and maybe it's not their every maybe it's not their like base defensive look, but have that in your bag where you can put Duggar and Peppers both free roaming in the box, and you have somebody back there who can be a center fielder and allow those guys to make plays up front. Like I do want to see them. Safety right now would probably be their biggest need for me on defense, a true free safety. I'd say that, and then corner, it's close.
I totally agree with you on that. It's the deep safety that we like. By the way, I know
free safety.
Yeah, we've gotten a few comments in the chat about we're not reading, and I apologize that I haven't pulled anyone up. We will, because there's a few in there that I want to get to, but the conversation in the chat's so good with the people in the chat already that it's like we don't have to even have that conversation. But here's our guy, Matt St. Jean, back from Taylor Swift Trivia. Did you win?
No, we did not win Taylor Swift Trivia tonight.
Let us all down.
I was very much getting carried on the team too.
Well,
I did very little to contribute to.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. I heard what you were saying there, Alex, about the safety stuff. Did Justin Simmons, did that name get brought up at all in the conversation?
I say he's still available. Yeah, I would absolutely take a shot. I'd love to see. I've said that since he got cut. I'd love to see them sign him.
Yeah.
You get those guys near the line of scrimmage, All those Kyle Duggar highlights in 2022 are him just sitting, on third down, sitting around wherever the first down marker is, preying on opposing quarterbacks. Get him there.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And get Peppers there too.
And that's the whole point, right? And so I drafted Jalen Simpson. You mentioned Jalen Simpson. I drafted him in a mock earlier. What I do, so interestingly enough, what I do is that I try to draft a different player in every mock, so I never repeat a player, right? And so
a little tough this year at the top of the draft.
It is. So I've like manipulated a bunch of things, and I've done I'm like, all right, well, what if we do this, and they can trade back here, and they can do this guy, and they can move up to number 1 and draft Caleb Williams, and it's like, I've gone a little nuts with it sometimes, but that's I think that's one of those interesting things for me where it's like you can find guys like that are deep safety guys, a Daron Harmon type player, where it's like, dude, just what was it Felger always say, GTFB, like just go back there, don't let anyone behind you, and let everyone else do everything in front of you, and then when something happens, you go from there, right? And so I think that that's a situation where they need a guy they're in need of a guy like that, because you want Duggar at the line of scrimmage, you want Peppers around the line of scrimmage. That's where things happen, right? And so that's where I want to see them play.
Yeah, with you 100%.
So we've gone through a lot of people here, Matt. Talked about our draft strategy at 3, draft strategy at 34. Whether you got to move up, whether you got to move down. Alex, we got to take a quick break, but when we come back from the break, I want to talk to you about wide receiver and guys specifically. So whether it's 34 or whether it's a little bit later, but guys that you want to look at, that you want the Patriots to draft in that kind of, in between 34 and 68 is really what we're looking at. So that's what we're looking at. So we'll be back. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back from that, and we'll get into the wide receivers with Alex Barth.
PrizePicks is America's #1 sports app with more than 3 million members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to get in on the action while you watch your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. Now get in on the playoff action. Win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $1,000 in just a few taps. PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make a pick and submit an entry in less than 60 seconds. This week on PrizePicks, I'm selecting Jason Tatum to dish out more than 5 assists and for his teammate Jaylen Brown to have more than 22.5 points. Download the app today and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. PrizePicks.
Okay, I lied to you because old man Mob threw something up, and I missed it the last time, but I'm going to bring it to you now. If somehow the Broncos are willing to trade Pat Surtain, which I can't imagine a world where they do. I know that there's a situation where there's a possibility. I mean, anything's possible, but would you say 3 for 12 and something else?
Definitely.
Whether it's a first or, whether it's a future first or a second this year or a future second, would you consider that?
No,
okay.
Not at all. Maybe if they somehow move up to 6 and then go from there and it's 6 and Surtain. But look, you just used your top pick last year on a corner. You just did that. And Christian Gonzalez is a good player. Like, I think he's going to be a very good player. But you move down to 12, it's Bo Nix. And I have no interest in being in the – for all the talk about me not liking J.J. McCarthy, I wouldn't even. I don't even have to think between JJ McCarthy and Bo Nix. Like JJ McCarthy, I can at least understand. Bo, you just traded away Mac Jones for a 6th-round pick. Now you're going to use the 12th overall pick on Mac Jones.
Right.
They don't need They need a second corner. They need a complementary corner. So you're adding a player who definitely would help, but doesn't fill a major need to take yourself out of the range of the biggest need you can have in a year where there's rare talent on the board at that position. So that is getting entirely too cute with it for me. No, I would not entertain that at all.
Okay. I agree with you, but I was curious as to your thoughts of it.
No,
it almost seems like, Pat Surtain's obviously extremely good.
Right.
But it's like you have, ideally, Christian Gonzalez is your cornerback 1. And so it's like you don't need to trade for another cornerback 1 when you already have one, even though, like, if this were Madden, I'd do everything I could to get him, right? And just be like, oh, what are you going to do? Throw on me? Go ahead. Good luck. But like, in real life, it makes it awfully difficult.
And that's the kind of move you're thinking about, in 2 or 3 years, if the quarterback they pick works out and things are going well, and you need the cherry on top. But hard to invest in getting the cherry when you don't even feel good about the ice cream right now.
Exactly. I like that.
But by the way, before we move on to wide receivers, I just looked up something in that break while we were talking defensive backs. Deron Harmon is a free agent right now. And he played for the Browns last year.
Logan Ryan somehow just retired. These guys are hanging on forever.
Yeah.
That's a great pick.
The Rutgers guys, they got that longevity in them.
Logan Ryan, I think Cordell Patterson's still playing, isn't he? He was part of that Logan Ryan trade.
Yeah, Patterson just signed with the Steelers, didn't he?
Oh, right. Yes, the Steelers. You're right. Yeah. Yep. He was part of that Logan Ryan trade, that Logan Ryan, Jamie Collins.
Yeah.
We won't mention,
that's such a weird skill
Boyce,
group. What is going on in the Pittsburgh offense? You got Najee Harris and Cordero Patterson and the other guy whose name I'm forgetting in the backfield. And they got Pickens, but they traded away Deontay Johnson.
What's his face?
Jaylen Warren.
Number 30,
Jaylen Warren. Yeah. What a weird group of players. And then you got the quarterback situation. I don't know what they're doing.
This is the alternative for the people who say it's too scary to draft a quarterback. That's the other option.
Yep, exactly.
Doesn't seem super fun either.
Well, and that's the thing.
This option, you have a chance of ending up with a start.
But what's interesting is that I feel like they did what I'm worried about the Patriots doing this year, which is they didn't love Kenny Pickett, but they needed a quarterback, so they drafted him. And they were at 20, so it was very different than the Patriots are right now at 3. But still, it was like you took a guy just because you were like, well, we need a quarterback, so let's take him. And it was like, he wasn't very good. Everyone kind of knew he wasn't going to be very good, and he wasn't. And so
I think,
but
I think they believed in Kenny Pickett. I think they did. They had so much information. His college coach's office is down the hall, right? That was a really unique situation where I think they knew so much about him. They would have been comfortable with him. Did they maybe take him a little too high? Yes, but that's just, you take quarterbacks. It's the price doing business. I didn't think Kenny Pickett was going to be very good, but I understand why I don't blame them for making that decision. I understand why they made that decision.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into these wide receivers.
Yeah.
Now you're on record as saying you take an offensive tackle around that 34, even if you got to move up a little bit and take that guy. I agree with you, right? We talked about that. We just talked about that. I agree with you. But let's say that they take a wide receiver somewhere in that 34 to 68 range. Who are the guys that you want them to take? And then also, would you look at it and say, well, if you're going to take a wide receiver, and you're at 34, package something and move up and get this guy because he's good enough that it makes sense, right? Whether it's a Brian Thomas Jr. or somebody like that you think like, okay, he's going to go in the first round, but he'd be worth it to move up and pass on a potential tackle.
So I think Brian Thomas is going to end up going a little high. There's a whole run of teams in there, Jaguars, Steelers, that need wide receivers in like the late teens, early 20s, and it's too rich to move up at that point. Like you look at the Kyle Duggar trade, and that's, to get up to 23, they gave up their second and third as well as the first, right? If I'm doing that, or sorry, they gave up their second and third to get back late into the first, if I'm doing my math right on that one. So
yeah,
I don't know that I'm giving up those to go up and get Brian Thomas, because I can give up a second and a fourth and get AD Mitchell, who I think is 90% of the player Brian Thomas is. Very similar player too, stylistically.
Yeah.
He's the guy I'd move up for in that middle range. I like Roman Wilson. I like Ricky Pearsall. Those are probably the two guys. I'm in and out on Xavier Legette. I can't really tell how I feel about him, and generally I end up out on those guys by the time the draft rolls around.
Yeah, I worry about him.
It's tough because I really just want them to get the true X outside receiver, because they have a bunch of good complementary players at the Z and in the slot. Kendrick Bourne, KJ Osborne, Pop Douglas, obviously, right? So like, I don't necessarily want to bury those guys. I don't want to. When I say don't want to improve on them, I mean like I would rather the Patriots add something they don't have than improve marginally on what they already do. But there's just not that many X guys in that range. Again, I think it's AD Mitchell. Could Ricky Pearsall maybe play a little X? Possibly. I don't love that fit, even though I think he's a good player. And I'm not a big believer in Troy Franklin or Keon Coleman. I think Troy Franklin is Tyquan Thornton. And maybe some other team figures out his usage better, but let some other team do that. And Keon, I don't think Keon Coleman's N'Keal Harry. I've seen a lot of people go there. I think he's more late career Devontae Parker.
Yeah.
Like he's big and he's got strong hands, and that's great. And that's kind of it. And I just don't think that guy's going to dictate coverage, because if you have a big physical corner that can go punch for punch with that guy, that's it, game over. So I struggle in that range to find the guy, which is even more reason why I'd like to see them go tackle there.
When you talk about those guys, then you start to get into like the, Jalen Polk, or, if you like Johnny Wilson, if that's your brand of guy and you want to try that. But I feel like once you get to that tier, we're talking, pick 68 or, a trade up from 68 into the 50s to go get a receiver you like.
Yeah, so there's some X's there that I like better. Like a guy like Brendan Rice. I really like Brendan Rice, actually. I think he's a good player.
Yeah.
I don't think Wilson's an X. I think Wilson's a Z. I think he's a massive Z, which is, he's weird. He's a unicorn. He's like, there's no comp for him. He's so his own thing. But you could try him there or Rice again. But yeah, you get in that next range and you start talking about the 68th pick.
Yeah.
What about Tez Walker? What's your feeling on him?
So to me, Tez Walker is very good at only one thing. It happens to be the most important thing in the modern NFL, which is explosive plays, deep balls, but that's it. So you have to be really sure on your evaluation of him. And you've got to, Tez Walker to me is like the day two version of Malik Neighbors, in that I don't think Malik Neighbors ever going to be a guy that catches like 8-9 balls a game. He's going to be 3 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like that's the kind of player he's going to be, right?
Yeah.
So can the Patriots operate the rest of their offense with their X receiver? And Tez Walker's not going to be that extreme, but he's a downfield threat. He's really, really, really good at the vertical stuff. But that's it. And is there going to be a role for that guy in your offense? Because I don't know how much he's developing beyond that. So if you can tell me, we're going to throw 10 to 12 balls a game to Pop, which because of his size worries me. And, Kendrick's going to be our most targeted receiver, which coming off the knee injury, as much as I love Kendrick Bourne, coming off the knee injury worries me. Like, yeah, all right. If you're going to draft a guy to run wind sprints like Nelson Aguilar was doing and Damiere Byrd was doing, you don't need to use your 3rd round pick on that guy. And unless you're actually going to throw the ball up to him, that's really all Tez Walker is going to give you. Again, if you can capitalize on that skill, it's a great skill. Yeah. But you have to have an ability to capitalize on it.
Yeah, I agree. Someone in the chat's mentioning Javon Baker, who I had in this week's mock, and people friggin' hated Javon
People
Baker.
love him or hate him. Like, I feel like everybody loves him, and then I mention him, and people are like, why aren't you talking about Javon Baker? Why aren't you talking about him? And then I talk about him.
Yeah, and then people are like, what do you
like?
Yeah.
Okay.
DJ mentioned this guy, Jermaine Burton from Alabama. I mean, I feel like multiple coaching staffs hate this guy. And so I don't know, like, scheme, like, just like culture wise and like locker room wise, I don't know if he'd be worth it. But the guy's got real talent. And like, he's an actual, like, kind of a freak athlete, 133-inch broad jump, 4.45 40 at, decently big, with 38.5-inch vert. Like, he's a good player, I think. But it's like, if he starts falling far enough, and the Patriots are drafting, have the third pick of day 3, could that be a guy that they target? And that's where I wonder. Like, I don't know if it's worth it early, but if it's late enough, I might say let's do it.
Yeah, looks like we lost Alex. So
Looks like we lost.
I'm Alex now in the video feed. No, what I was going to add to that.
There he is.
I'm back.
Sorry about that. I don't know how I switched. There you go. All right.
I think also once we get to this point, day 2, day 3, you got a lot of imperfect prospects. So one, I think we're going to learn a lot about New England and what they think they can fix about a player. And this is also, when you're ranking these guys, it's what do you think is fixable? Can you develop Tez Walker and fix his hands? Can you take advantage of a guy like Troy Franklin and some of the explosion he can bring? Can you build on what Xavier Legette did late? Can you take a Keon Coleman who's young and build him into something more?
Right.
Every team's going to have different answers to these questions. And that's why I feel like once we get to day 2, you can kind of throw out the board when it comes to receivers too, because how many guys have we talked about already in the receiver stuff on day 2? And I think any of these guys could go from, in the 30s to falling to the top of day 3, just depending on, what specific teams are looking for this year. And the board gets all jumbled. And and then it gets hard to predict if you're New England, because, maybe this is the other part. If you only like 2 or 3 guys, do you want to take the risk that somebody gets taken before pick 68? Or do you just want to jump on them at 34? I think there's varying approaches to that. And, I think I think we all have our opinions on which specific players we like, but I'm just so curious to see it's a new front office. Like, we get to start learning about a new group of guys and how they see it. I really want to see how they handle this.
And new scouting philosophy too. Like, the scouting system is different than it was. Right. And I think that's when people say, well, the guys are the same, even if the guys are all the same, which they brought in a few new guys, but a lot of the scouts are the same. They're doing a new system now. So they're not looking at the guys the same way that they were. And so that's going to change things, I think, just, organically, because you're grading them in a different way you were grading them before. And I think that's, going to create some change as to what they might be looking for. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing. We had for 20 years, we had 20 years of data to go on and 20 years of, prior examples and context and things like that. And you can kind of crunch the numbers from Green Bay a little bit with Elliott Wolf, but he's the assistant GM. We don't even know how much he was really in charge. And it really is new territory.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the big lesson you always take away from the Wolf guys is that they like big receivers. But Wolf came over to New England and they picked Tyquan Thornton. So, like, how much is that going to play into this?
Quite true.
Yeah. I don't know if you talked about this at all before, Pat, but while we're doing receivers, if the Patriots do a trade back and end up at 6, they trade back with the Giants, you think a receiver at 6 and just take, whoever the top 3 is left?
So I would take Joe Alt personally. Mm-hmm. I just think you start to rebuild with the tackle over the receiver, but Malik Neighbors is the only one of the top non-quarterbacks they've shown interest in. They met with him at the pro day. And he's not a bad player. So I did a trade down mock this week. I mocked Malik Neighbors to them. I think that, if I had to bet on it, that's what I would go. If the Patriots trade down to 6, who are they going to take? But I would personally go Joe Alt.
Yeah.
And what about Rome Odunze there? He's the big body receiver, so he fits that, and there's a lot of great
I
leadership
love
stuff
Rome
on him.
Odunze. I think I'm as high on. I honestly, if you're going to tell me to go receiver, I might go Rome Odunze. He reminds me of a bigger Stephon Diggs. I just think his game is so complete already in that he runs a complete route tree. He can compete after the catch. He can compete at the catch point. He gets off the line of scrimmage. All that, and he's got the mentality too. Like he's a gamer. I'd love to see them land him. I really think he can play.
Yeah. So it's going to be fascinating to see kind of where it plays out. And what's interesting is that I feel like a great spot to take him would have been 8. And now where Atlanta has Kirk Cousins, they're not going to move up to 3, right? And I think that was a potential spot for the Patriots to move back to and take a guy like Odunze, because in my opinion, Chicago almost definitely is going to go wide receiver at 9. And so, and they might not, but I know they traded for Keenan Allen, but it's like Keenan Allen's old. If they can get another stud wide receiver to pair with, their new tackle from last year and their brand new quarterback, they take number 1. I think that makes a ton of sense. And so 8 would have been a nice spot, but doesn't seem like that's going to happen anymore.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they go Brock Bowers there. That'd be the only other guy, but yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. All right, let's get into some of these mocks, some of these listener mocks. By the way, people, listener mocks, send them in. It's Pats Nation Network, all one word, Pats Nation Network @gmail.com. And we'll just kind of fly through some of these. I want to just take a look at the top, and then if there's any guys at the end that you want to point out, Alex, we can certainly do that. So all right, so here's the first one. So we have Drake May at 3, Xavier Leggett at 46, Patrick Paul at 68, and then Cade Stover. Bub Means, the guy that people mentioned in the chat, who I like a lot, and Tanner Bortolini. I mean, anytime you throw Tanner Bortolini in there, and then you mentioned Brendan Rice, if you throw me a Tanner Bortolini or a Ben Sinnott in there, I'm in on the draft. If you give me one of those guys, and both of them, I'm 100% in. So, interesting pick here. Obviously, you move back, pick up a 3rd round pick next year, and move back from 34 to 46, and then pick up some of those mid-round picks as well. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's somebody who's clearly watched and read a ton of what I've done. So thank you. I mean, guys that I've hammered. I don't know if you can pull that back up, but they had in some of the spots.
By the way, John Riley, this is who it's from.
So Patrick Paul, I'm very high on. Cade Stover, I like. Jalen Wright, I is one of my top running backs in this draft. I like Rice. I don't think you're getting him at 117. I like Garendo. I don't know about him and Wright. And then Bub Means and Tylen Grable are 2 guys I'm super high on as well. So I mean, I like the collection of players. I don't know about some of these guys and some of these spots, how realistic that is, but that's a haul. That's a legit haul. You got a ton of talent there.
Yep.
And you got 3 different receivers there who I think they all play the X role in slightly different ways. I don't know if Legette's going to be an X the next level.
I don't think
might be a
Legette's
Z.
Next. Yeah.
And 2 of the fastest running backs in the draft there too. So
a
lot of athleticism there.
Yeah,
and lots of dart throws, which I think, when you're drafting a rookie quarterback, taking a lot of throws is good.
Yep, agreed. All right, number 2 here. This one is from Tim Fitzgerald, and he has a few trade backs here, but he has them taking Olu Fashanu, and then Brian Thomas Jr., and then Tyler Guyton. So 2 tackles and a wide receiver early on, and then Ricky Pearsall, and then Spencer Rattler a little bit later on. And then we don't
double quarterback draft.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's an interesting one from Tim. Tim sent over a bunch of them. He's got some really good ones. This one, I like the top of it, and then it kind of falls apart for me. I don't mind Spencer Rattler, but then once we get past that, I'm like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. My thing on quarterbacks has been take them first or take them last. Like, if you don't believe in any of the top quarterbacks, that's fine. But the hit rate on day 2, hit rate in the 2nd or 3rd round is very similar to the hit rate in the 6th or 7th round. So go draft, Jason Bean or Devin Leary or, Andrew Peasley's probably undrafted. But you certainly don't need 2 lottery ticket guys. You're just
Jordan Travis.
I can't get excited about Jordan Travis. I was during the season. I just think 6 foot tall guy who needs to throw a ton on the run, who's having this significant leg injury, might not be 25 until he gets on a field again. It's just like, if you're taking a guy late, you're going for upside. And how much upside is there with, like, how much upside is there with any of these guys late?
Right.
But I don't, he's like, it's nothing against Jordan Travis. I just can't get excited about him for where the Patriots are.
I would, if I'm taking a late flyer, I'm taking Joe Milton just off the vibes, just air it the hell out. You know what I mean? Like,
I'll
be
say
so
again,
much fun.
I don't think there's a ton of upside with Joe Milton. Like, I wouldn't.
No, almost none.
If you can get him outside, if you get him like, 193 or 237, fine. Have at it, whatever. Anything before that, to me, any team that's going to draft Joe Milton, this is going to sound crazy. Any team that needs to draft Joe Milton needs to have a plan. Any team that wants to draft Joe Milton needs to have a plan for his floor. And you may be thinking, what's Joe Milton's floor? It's terrible.
It's pretty low.
I would use him. I hesitate to say Taysom Hill because I don't think he's a tight end. I don't think Joe Milton can play tight end. But using him as kind of a gadget player where I'd use him for quarterback sneaks.
Interesting idea.
And I'd use him at the end of halves to throw Hail Marys. And like, maybe you have some other sort of, belldozer package. It's a very college-y philosophy here where you have special. This is what Joe Milton did at Michigan, and Michigan still does with Alex Orji behind JJ McCarthy. That's how I would use. I would not count. You can try to develop him. I mean, have at it. Go for it. I would not count on developing Joe Milton. I would draft him if I were, and I don't want the Patriots to draft him, which may surprise some people. I'm very amused by him, but as fun as the preseason would be, I think there's better uses they can make of those picks. If the Patriots were to draft him, I would actually hope it to be for his floor and not his ceiling, and just, hey, we're going to have some packages for this guy where we're going to take advantage of his very unique skills. And that's kind of what that's going to be. That's to me, I think, his NFL role.
Well, and I think you hit on it with a lot of the day three quarterbacks too, is that most of these guys are old. Like, there's just not a lot of untapped potential there. And there's not like I don't think there's like a Jarrett Stidham level guy out there even where you're like, all right, well, he had potential and he moved around a little bit.
Yeah.
You see the flashes and you just want to get him settled. Like, there's a lot of guys who I wouldn't take before Jarrett Stidham or before a Bailey Zappi. Like, I think those guys are better prospects than a lot of the day three guys in this
that was supposed to be that was supposed to be KJ Jefferson, Cam Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would argue Quinn Ewers, but like, those guys aren't going to come in the draft anymore.
Yeah.
As long as they still have eligibility, they're going to go back to school,
100%.
get paid, try to increase their stock. So I think the days of like the Jalen Hurts in the draft, I think we've seen that. Well, he was out of eligibility, but I mean, you're not going to see as many of those guys come through the draft anymore.
Well, they're going to come through like Bo Nix or Michael Penix, where you feel like they may have fully developed already, and you're getting.
I would say you could also argue that guy's supposed to be JJ McCarthy, and then the league fell in love with him. So
that's true too. Quinn Ewers is the guy that of course he went back to school, but before he did, I was sold on the idea of taking him in the third round, right? And trying to develop him and see what happens, we'll see how it goes this year in Texas, which that's just such a bizarre quarterback room situation with Arch playing behind Quinn Ewers.
I don't think it's that bizarre. I don't think Arch is very good.
And so maybe that's it, right? Maybe it's just the name. I just feel like he should be good. Everyone was like, this guy's the best player ever. And he just doesn't seem like he's that good.
You had quick college football tangent here. I apologize. But you had that Texas team that was, and this is Texas football. They're not wasting years.
Yep.
You had a Texas team that was making a run at a national championship. They were undefeated. They were going to have a shot to go to the college football playoff, and their starting quarterback, Quinn Ewers, gets hurt. They did not turn to Arch Manning. They turned to, and I am blanking on his name. They turned to the other quarterback, Malik. I think it's Malik Murphy, right?
Yeah.
Whoever they turn to. Yeah, they turn to Malik. Who's like, Malik Murphy's not bad. He's not like, it's nothing against Malik Murphy. I think he's a fine quarterback. He just transferred. It'll be interesting to watch him. But like, if the season was on the line for Texas football, why are they not going to go to the guy that gives them the best chance to win? And Malik Murphy was like, again, he's not bad. He's like a 3-star prospect. I think low-level 4-star prospect, something like that. Arch Manning's Arch Manning. He's this 5-star, but what did the coaches see? Who did they feel gave them the better chance to win the game? Right. If Arch Manning's not beating out Malik Murphy, how am I supposed to believe he's this generational quarterback?
Well, right.
Was that about burning a red shirt? Did it have anything to do with that? And not
Again,
to,
I think for the position Texas football was in,
you burn the red shirt if he's
you
that
burn
good.
the red. Right. If he was that good, let me to win a national title, they would have burned the red shirt. Right.
100%.
You would think. So he's clearly not that level of player.
And so I'm not a college football guy, but I just looked up Malik Murphy online just out of curiosity. He did transfer to Duke. So it's not like this guy is, a Power 5, darling, and he's going to go out and dominate. And listen, I mean, Duke guys have gone high in the draft before. I'm not saying that they can't, but like, he's not transferring to Duke if he is this like great quarterback that people are like, oh my God, he was just behind Quinn Ewers, and so he couldn't get on the field. So,
that situation's played out. Look at this draft. Spencer Rattler was the number 1 recruit in his class. He was supposed to be this generational quarterback, goes to Oklahoma. He's going to be the next great Lincoln Riley success story after Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. Has an up and down freshman year, started as a freshman, had an up and down freshman year, comes back a sophomore year, is the favorite for the Heisman, gets to week 6, loses the starting job in the Red River game to Caleb Williams, who goes on to have the rest of the career that Spencer Rattler was supposed to have. So you can unseat that guy. You can absolutely unseat that guy. And what became of Spencer Rattler? He's fine. He's a fine college quarterback who may hang around as an NFL backup. Yeah. That might be who Arch Manning is. Like, I'm not totally sold on the whole Arch Manning thing just because of the last name. I think that whole thing is overrated.
Yeah. Before we get back to the mocks, if we're doing some college football quarterback talk for a second, and we're doing Mannings, I'm gonna head over to Ole Miss. Barth, do you watch a lot of Ole Miss at all?
I watched them a good amount this year, yeah.
Because Jackson Dart is a name when I was scrolling through some of the prospects who intrigued me because his pressure to sack rate isn't too bad, and there's been like improvement on every single season, and that's not a receiving core that's like loaded with guys. And I feel like when we look at next year's quarterback class, that's a name that I feel like might be under the radar. Maybe I'm totally misreading it with him, but he can run. He's improved as a passer
in the conversation.
He can avoid sacks.
Yeah, he'll be in the conversation. He's pretty inconsistent. Like when he's on, on, but he's not always on. In the Lane Kiffin quarterbacks, there's, that offense is very quarterback friendly, right? So he's definitely a guy that you have circled as like a potential first round riser, I think, but I got to see a lot more from him to put him in that tier. He also, was playing with Quinshon Judkins, and teams are pretty much selling out to stop the run. And now Judkins at Ohio State, they have an unfair backfield with Travion Henderson and him. So I think they're going to put more on Jackson Dart's shoulders this year, which could be good. Like if he takes that and runs with it, hell yeah. If he doesn't, I mean, he's just like 90% of college quarterbacks.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back into it. I just want to get through these kind of quick. Nelson Lloyd here sent us a bunch, but this one, I'm not sure how he pulled it off, but he somehow went from 3 all the way to 27 and didn't get a future first round pick.
It's disqualifying right there. This is quantity, not quality. No, there's some good players here.
There are, and T'Vondre Sweat is a guy that I think in that second round spot, if you were to move back and pick up some extra picks, and of course he just got the DUI, maybe that drops him a little bit further. I don't think it does much, but it could.
I'm pretty sure Dane Bruckler in the Beast today had T'Vondre Sweat as like a 4th rounder, something like that, which caught my eye.
Yeah, that's going to worry teams because there were concerns before about his commitment level.
Yeah,
and then to get a DUI 2-3 weeks before the draft.
That's wild. 3 weeks before the draft.
Teams aren't going to love that. Yeah. I don't think the Patriots are going to take him for a team that's talked as much about character and all of this. I mean, look, it'd be great. I think he's a tremendous player. I'm a huge fan of his. I just don't think it's happening. It's certainly not happening at 37.
Yeah. All right. Zach Salant right here. Jaden Daniels at 3, your guy. Ladd McConkey at 34. And Karan Amagaji at 68.
Yeah.
And then Cam Hart and Bub Means at the end of the draft. I mean, that's
Cole Bishop.
If you're a Jaden Daniels guy, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah,
Cole Bishop is a very athletic safety too.
Yeah.
I really like Cam Hart, and the thing you have to like about Cam Hart is he plays his best when the competition's the best. He locked down Marvin Harrison Jr. He was great at the Senior Bowl. Tremendous size, 6'2", 202. I think he'd pair super well with Christian Gonzalez, where Gonzalez is going to take the team's like faster, speedier receiver. Hart's going to take the more physically dominant receiver. I honestly don't know why he's projected to go this low. To me, he's like a frit, like 60, 70, somewhere in there. Former team captain too, multi-year starter. Maybe that's what it is. He's a little older. Teams are a little hesitant because of his ceiling, but if they can find a way to, like Cam Hart, I said earlier, like I think corner is kind of a need. Like Cam Hart is the exact kind. They don't need to go big on corner. They bring in Cam Hart, and now you have Gonzalez, Cam Hart, Jonathan Jones rotating on the outside, Marcus Jones in the slot. Like that's a solid. And then Alex Austin and Marco Wilson fit in there somewhere.
Right.
That's a solid group. Solid group of corners.
I like that. I like that quite a bit, and I agree with you. All right. We just got three more real quick here. Old Man Mob here with J.J. McCarthy at 5, moving back. I think what he did here was move back from 5. He said it in the chat, but he said it in the email he sent. I think he moved back to 5, took McCarthy, which would be, I'll tell you what, to move back from 5 with Jim Harbaugh and then take his quarterback would be something. And then I think he traded something for 23 to Minnesota. Took Jordan Morgan. Another Xavier Legette here, Jalen McMillan at 68, Braylon Allen, Jaheim Bell, who's a guy that we haven't talked about yet, but I saw someone compare him to Jonnu Smith, and I thought that was a decent comparison. A guy that has a high ceiling, you just have no idea what we're going to get from him. And so he could be really good. He could be terrible. We have no idea. But I think it's worth a shot as late as he's probably going to be available.
Yeah, I was just on Taylor Kyles. We talked a lot about Jordan Morgan. I can't get excited about him because he's, the book on him is, he's got the short arms. He's under that 33-inch threshold.
Yep.
So we'll try him at tackle, but worst case scenario, he'll be a guard. No, they have enough freaking guards.
Right.
1 in the first round 2 years ago, 3 in the top 150 last year. No. You should have the bodies at this point. You should have the bodies at guard. I'm drafting a tackle to play tackle. I'm not drafting a tackle to maybe I don't need Isaiah Wynn. I'm good.
Right.
I'm good on that one. Go get me a real tackle.
Right. And again, if you want to take, I love Tanner Bortolini. You want to take Tanner Bortolini in the draft. That's okay. He's got position flexibility. He might be able to play tackle, but you're not drafting him to be a starter. You're drafting him to be a swing guy. And maybe one day he develops into a guy that could be a starter, but you're not drafting him in the top 100 to say, oh, we're going to start this guy. He's a potential starter at guard. It's what are we doing? We don't need to do that.
You got to go quarterback, tackle, receiver, safety, corner, and then running back or tight end before, and maybe edge guy before you can start talking to me about going guard. Yeah. Guard is you've traded down. That's your 8th or 9th pick in the draft.
Right.
Yeah, and I think a guard to me is also if they're sitting somewhere and they're top rated guy by a mile as a guard, I'm cool with that because Cole Strange question mark, City so look good but still a question mark. If you got a guy, if you're there and somebody falls, I'm down. But I think if you're going to go with an offensive lineman at 23, give me somebody with real tackle upside. That's Mims is probably a name that comes to mind there.
Yeah, how do you feel about Mims, Barth? Are you in on him?
I mean,
such a project.
A lot to be intrigued by. Massive dude. The tape looks good for as little as he's played. If you're going to commit to benching the quarterback for the year, you can also afford to wait on playing the left tackle. And if you feel like you can develop him, and look, this is a coaching staff that just developed DeJuan Jones, right?
Right.
Who's another big guy. Now he had a lot more experience, but another big guy. Those guys just kind of develop differently. You could talk me into it, but I don't know that I love Amarius Mims week 1 protecting a rookie quarterback, but you can also draft a rookie quarterback and Amarius Mims and not have them on the field week 1. So
quite true.
I'd rather have Amarius Mims than Jordan Morgan. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right, 2 more. Here we go. This one from Michael. Drake May at 4. So they moved back to 4. Drake May at 4. Brian Thomas Jr. at 19. Jordan Morgan again. Xavier Legette. Legette's all over the place here. Elijah Jones from Boston College. Oh, as a Ben Sinnott sighting again. Love to see it. Love to see the Ben Sinnott sightings. And then a few guys here late in the draft. Again, I love Drake May, so I like starting off there. I don't love Leggett, and we just talked about Jordan Morgan, but the top of this draft, I like the top of this draft. I just don't know how I feel about the rest of it.
You just can't trade down to 4. That's not going to happen because if you trade down to 4, what's going to happen?
Losing out.
The Cardinals are going to now auction off the 3rd pick and get a bag. You're just giving the Cardinals the bag you could have got. Like people, the Cardinals will take Marvin Harrison. No, they won't. No, they won't.
Right.
They won't. Like,
and
if you pass on a quarterback and you take Harrison, like somebody's getting the bag up. If one of the quarterbacks are on the board, one of the top 3 quarterbacks on the board, and that pick gets traded, somebody's getting a bag. If somebody's going to get it, it should be you.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. And you saw what Monty did last year. Monty Austin Fort will 100% take the bag to move out. Yes. He will do it. He'll do it. And maybe he did it last year and then he packaged some picks and moved back up to 6 to take Paris Johnson. Fine. But he got the package of picks to move out in the first place. He'll do it again. And so, all right, last one here. This was from Ryan on the show today. May, Kingsley, Tez Walker, BPA at 103, Javion Foster, AJ Barner at 180, and then he just said an OT, and then 231 with Bub Means. I like Bub quite a bit. I think he's a late round sleeper. But the problem with those late round sleeper guys that actually look pretty good is that they don't end up being super late round sleepers. They end up going a lot earlier than people expect.
Yeah. Is Javion Foster? Is that Javon Foster?
It's got to be Javon Foster. Yeah, I must have. Yeah.
So we're really going 3 tackles. I don't hate, honestly, because they just need bodies. I mean, this would be, if you tell me BPA is a defensive back, Cam Hart, maybe Cam Kitchens falls a little bit.
We can leave it up there. Who is BPA?
I think that's just best player available.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes sense.
So if you're telling me the best
player,
you're telling me the best player available is a defensive back, this is a very solid draft. I would not be upset. I'm lukewarm on Tez Walker, but if you're drafting him to pair with Drake May, it sells me on it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say this is the best draft that they could have, but if they came away with that, I think they did pretty well for themselves.
Yeah, I agree. Nice. Okay. Whew. That was a lot of mock drafts. A lot of prospects we got through there, Barth. It was some good stuff. It was some really good stuff. Is there anyone that we didn't talk about that you're like, I got to talk about this guy? It doesn't matter where he's drafted. It's so one of the guys that I didn't mention, and I wanted you to ask him. Yeah. I pick a guy every year to be my guy. Yeah. A day 2 pick. Of course, my guy last year ended up being a day 1 pick in Emmanuel Forbes. I thought I assumed he'd go in the second, and he did not. But my guy this year is Malachi Corley. I'm wondering what you think about Malachi Corley.
Great skill set, definitely. I just worry that he's a little small for a guy that's going to take a lot of contact. And how long is his career going to be? He might be good, but he might be a flash. And when it comes to the Patriots, I think it's tough to have him and Pop Douglas on the field at the same time. So I'd rather go with a different kind of receiver where you're going to have to take him, just because I don't really want to. Pop Douglas is the one thing you have going for you. Why is that the one guy you're looking to replace? So I mean, I understand liking Corley. I don't think he makes a ton of sense for the Patriots.
Yeah. And I kind of agree with you. As much as I would love to see him on the field, it's I just don't know if you already have Pop. It's where does he fit? Because he fits kind of that Deebo Samuel type role. But you're right, he's not as big as Deebo is, right? And so you just wonder, that how long does he have an NFL running back career where he's there for 3.5, 4 years and then that's it, and so. What you do with guys like that, so at least before the DUI, right? Tavondre Sweat was the guy that I was man, if only the Patriots could figure out a way to get this guy. And admittedly, it doesn't make sense for them to take a 370-pound defensive tackle that high. So, you put that name in your back pocket, and in 4 years, when he hits free agency, you go back to it. That's kind of how I view those guys. Yep. By the way, when I say my guy, it's not necessarily a Patriots fit. He's just a guy that in the second round that I just love. So I actually had Marcus Jones, but before Marcus Jones was oh my God. I'm blanking on his name. Dude, why am I blanking on his name? 32 for the Chiefs, middle linebacker.
Oh, Nick Bolton. I was big on Nick Bolton that year too. Yeah.
Love Nick Bolton from Missouri. And actually, I wanted the Patriots to draft him, but but they didn't, and so that's okay. And he ends up being an All-Pro, middle linebacker for the Patriots, and that's okay. By the way, Chris Dunlap saying that Alex Barth breaks down college players better than some of the experts on ESPN. I would say not some of the experts, most of the experts.
No, I'm not even going to pretend I come anywhere close to Kirk Herbstreit. Kirk Herbstreit is the standard.
Well, Herbstreit, I mean, we're not saying Kirk Herbstreit.
He's an analyst on ESPN. I love myself some Kirk Herbstreit. I can get through Saturday and fall without him. Yeah, it's funny. Like, I don't know who my guy is this year because I usually have a guy or two like that. Like it was Tariq Woolen a couple of years ago, DeJuan Jones, Darnell Washington last year. So I will say this was a new experience this year. We all have players we like that are good.
Yep.
Sometimes we have we have players we don't like that aren't good. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there are players that are good that you don't like. That definitely happens.
Yep.
I think I experienced it first this year. I found a player I truly like that I don't think is very good. And that's Joe Milton. So Joe Milton has somehow become my guy. I think it's because of Felger and Maz. Like Joe Milton and Bub Means on Patriots Beat have become my guys. And I like maybe Bub Means is my guy. I like Bub Means. I think he's a good developmental receiver if the Patriots are going to double up like that. I wouldn't, Bub Means is not going to solve all your problems. But if you're going to double up, take a project guy later on after taking like an A.D. Mitchell, I like Bub Means better than most of the receivers in that range of the draft. Right. Joe Milton fascinates me. He entertains me. I cannot get enough Joe Milton. I do not want him on my team. I don't. I want to watch. Joe Milton is best enjoyed from afar. And the good news is, even when you're far away from Joe Milton, he can still get the ball to you. But right? How can you not be captivated by somebody like him? He's so entertaining.
You know what he reminds me of Jameis Winston, and not as play style, but like I think Jameis is incredible. I love him, but I want no part of him on my team. No part of him.
The thing about Joe Milton too is like you listen to him talk, and he's a very impressive guy, and he has that leadership tangent that you want. Like Jameis, there were some questions about that coming out. Like Joe Milton is, he's the kind of guy you want in the locker room, you want in the huddle, all of that. I've said it, like Joe Milton is really good at all the individual things you need to be good at football. He's just not good at football. And that's kind of where we're at. I've never seen anything like it.
And I'll tell you, one of my favorite things, and I noticed it today. And so I'm going to read it because I think it's hysterical because you just said that. And yet, in your Twitter header, it says a quote from Bill Belichick, a big part of football is the actual football part of it, which is why you like Joe Milton, but you're like, we can't draft him. He's just not good at football,
Right.
I was, as a Michigan fan, I was subjected to a full season of Joe Milton, and I've had a lifetime's worth. I'm all set now.
That's the thing. I'm enjoying like the NFL people who don't follow college are all getting exposed to Joe Milton. And all the college people are like Walter White in the backseat of the Suburban, like, no, like, because they know what's on the other side of it. And I'm just enjoying watching all of that. I'm just sitting back and watching it all play out. And
but guys, you can throw an orange 85 yards. It's like
110 yards with the orange. Don't shortchange him on the orange.
What I've been saying about him is he's a guy who could ring the bell on top of the lighthouse with a football. The problem is he was trying to throw to the guy in the end zone.
Right. No, that's my line. If you need somebody to throw it 80 yards, Joe Milton will throw it 80 yards. If you need somebody to throw it 5 yards, Joe Milton will throw it 80 yards.
I love it. That's the when you did the Simpsons meme on Twitter with that, I was dying.
Yeah. That's
so we got a few people here. Sion Vaki from Mike Larry. That's a good one. Safety.
I watched his tape. I was less impressed by his tape than I thought I would be, if I'm being honest.
I think it's more an upside thing.
Yeah.
But he's an older guy, right?
Yeah, but the idea that he can play safety and running back both at a high level, I think people are just they think it's like another Marcus Jones.
It's a great idea, except for the whole playing football part. Right? I didn't think he was anything special.
And then DJ Daniel mentions Roger Rosengarten, and I listen. I'm telling you, I promise you, if they draft Roger Rosengarten, all I'm going to do, anytime they speak his name, anytime they talk about him, is make Rookie of the Year references. It's all I will do every single time, no matter what. Rosenbacher and all those. Like it's gonna be fantastic. So I'm actually hoping they draft him just for that because I'm very excited about that. And there's a huge contingent of Twitter that will not get it at all because they haven't seen the movie before because they're too young, which is insane to me to think about that. But nevertheless, Roger Rosengarten is definitely a guy that people are high on later in the draft.
Yeah, he might not go that late. He might end up being a day 2 pick. Super athletic tackle, smart guy. He'd be a lock to be a top 100. He had a rough national championship game. And that counts for something. Obviously, you don't entirely throw that out, but you look at his entire body of work, and I think he's being underrated right now.
Yeah,
which I think. Side note, it's interesting. I feel like there's a lot more right tackles in this draft than you usually see in one.
Yeah, but a lot of them are athletic and like potential swing tackles, but you're right. There's definitely more right tackles than left tackles. You think it should be about 50-50, right? And it's not.
It's usually a little bit more towards left tackle, just usually because the better tackle plays the left side. And you got Blake Fisher, you got Roger Rosengarten as guys who are like second fiddle to the guy on the other side of the line. And then you got like Fuaga, and you also got a whole bunch of guys who are like, they played right in college, but project to left in the NFL. And I just don't feel like you see that very often. Like if you're the Patriots, you're trying to draft somebody, late day 1 or early day 2. I don't know. It's a weird position when you already feel good about right tackle and the guys on the board. You're going to have to switch sides with them.
Yeah.
Right.
One last question before we get out of here. Somebody asked in the chat, and I forget who it was. You know what? There it is. Gary Sauerbutts just asked. I'll just throw it back up there because it's the last one. But he's asking about a tight end, a developmental tight end. So, of course, we talked about Jaheim Bell. Any other developmental tight ends, kind of, day 3 developmental guys that you're like, okay, I can see this guy developing into something. Is it a Theo Johnson type guy? Is it someone else?
Yeah, I think there's more of these players than maybe people are initially giving credit for. The one guy that comes to me is comes to mind for me is Eric All from Iowa. If you go back and Matt, I'm sure 2021, he has this great season in Michigan, is expected to be a top 100 pick, suffers a back injury, missed the vast majority of 2022, transfer to Iowa. And then Iowa's offense, he's obviously not able to do anything. So now here he is again. He's kind of a pure receiving tight end. I think if a team truly falls in love with the 2021 tape, they may talk themselves into, hey, we're getting, some value here, taking this guy on day 3. The other one is Devin Culp from Washington, just a tremendous athlete for the position. Kind of got lost under the radar, behind McMillan and Polk and Adunze and even Dylan Johnson. And does somebody kind of look at the athleticism there and say, hey, this guy maybe in a bigger role can do a little bit more?
Yep. But All tore his ACL back in October too. So it's a couple seasons in a row.
That's right. Yeah.
Season-ending injuries, which he didn't do the combine. I don't think either. I don't think
he was there. I don't think he worked out, but he was there.
Yeah, which that's the other thing. If he tore his ACL in October, he should be back, but he's going to miss part of the rookie camp stuff. Which I like the upside on him. I'm just curious where he lands because I don't know how teams are going to value that.
Yep.
Yeah, every team's going to have. There will be some teams that have him as a 4th round pick. There will be some teams that have him undrafted. Like he's going to be all over the place on boards.
Yeah. All right. That's it, man. That's it. That's all we got. This has been a hell of a 90 minutes, almost 90 minutes.
Yes.
Thank you for coming through, Alex. We really appreciate you. Love your work over at the Sports Hub. And, we talked about it at the beginning, but I love the fact that you guys that were grinding so hard and, doing an awesome job, but kind of under the radar now are getting your shine on the big networks in the Boston area. And so we're happy about it. It's a win for everyone. I feel like it's a win for all of us, right? When we see someone like you make it and we're like, oh, that's a win for everyone. Like there's Barth killing it over at 98.5 The Sports Hub. It's great. And so
win for the people.
Exactly. Yeah. That's right. So
trying to do my best.
Yeah, man, you're killing it. So before you go though, let everyone know where they can read you and see you and hear you and everything else.
Yeah, 985thesportshub.com. I put out 2 mock drafts on Monday. Had the draft linebackers preview go up yesterday. Cornerback preview will go up tomorrow, Thursday, I guess, whenever people watch this might already be up. New Catch 22 tomorrow with Evan Lazar tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow night, new Patriots Beat show. I'll be doing another live mock draft with Brian Hines. So
love it.
A lot of stuff already out, a lot of stuff coming up.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Alex. For we appreciate the chat. It was killing it all night. We appreciate you guys. Great questions, great conversation. So thank you for being there as always. We're going to be back Monday after the marathon at our regular time, doing another mock draft, talking about Matt's mock draft 5.0, and probably doing a live mock draft too. We'll see what happens. But that's what we got. We're 2 weeks away, people. 2 weeks away. We're almost there. So anyways, enjoy. Thanks, Alex, for coming on, and we'll talk to you guys on Monday night.